Welcome back to Robinson's Auto Tools and Time.com. We're back with this Toyota RAV4. It's a 2008, no forward, no reverse transmission carrying on. I did a short video on this, but just in case you haven't seen it, here's a real quick recap of me dropping the pan. And just look at all that.
That's what I want to see. I want to get in here, confirm 100% that something has definitely failed. So we're going to start by removing the air cleaner, the air box, the battery, and all the big things that are in our way. As you can see, this cover is going to have to come off to do so. So you have a bunch of these little clips. Some are popped out already. Some you just got to push the center down on and pop them out. All right, make short work out of that. Now we can gain access to the battery hold down. We have ourselves a 10mm ratchet wrench. See if that'll work here. Disconnect the negative side of the battery. Pop on over here. Do the same thing for the positive. You know what? I'm going to put a pair of gloves on. It's first thing in the morning. All right, now we mean business. Got ourselves a 10mm. This one you can usually just pop out, so you don't have to take this back one out all the way. I should be able to remove the battery. See what's involved with popping this air box off. We have a little electrical connection here, another one here. Just gonna pop them out. A little Phillips head screw here. We'll see how easy it comes out. If it doesn't come out easy, actually, you know what? I don't want to spend too much time on it. Let's see if we get it to pop through the rubber here without breaking. So at least then I could just slide this back and all the hoses stay connected. In the back, we have one of these clamps, but it's more of a squeeze clamp. Really no sense of getting you guys back there at the moment. We'll have plenty of time. Have another hose right here. So as you see, that's all I simply did was squeeze that together and she latched in place. We'll remove the air cleaner. All right, so now we're down to the box. Inside, you'll have 3 10mm bolts. Thought for sure I was going to need an extension, didn't you? We'll pop this off. Just looking around, whatever's going to make our life easier, do it now. Don't procrastinate, just do it. Might be hard to see here, but next I'm going to take and try to remove this tray. So I got a 12 here and a 12 here. That's going to also have a ground wire, so don't forget about that. And let's remove these two 12s. Now at this point I can remove these two 12s. Get that out of the way, voila. I'm glad to see it uses an external transmission cooler because this thing's loaded with metal. And I was wondering if I was going to have to replace the radiator or whatnot, but looks like we just have a simple cooler to deal with. All right, looking at the starter next. A little push tab. We have, looks like we're going to be dealing with a lot of 12mm. You know, I used to love this little ratchet. It's made by AC Delco, and it's been solid. But the detent ball, or whatever you want to call it, no longer holds my sockets because it's missing. So I'm constantly dropping sockets with it. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to have to retire the old girl just because of that. Insider is going to get thrown. I'm trying to keep my sanity. All right, starter's out. All right. I'm going to start now looking at all the electrical connections. Again, anything that might be attached to the transmission up top. This little breather we can just pop off and leave in place. We got probably a speed sensor of some sort here. We got a big plug down here. I'll give you closer shots once we get to it. Essentially, it's just all plug and play components here, so no sense of reading that. I got a ground wire that goes to the transmission. I'll show you that real quick. So right about here, we got a 12 millimeter. That's going to be a ground. Screwdriver, pop that up out. Just push this out of the way somewhere. We'll just remember we have all these grounds tucked away. These are the other two plugs down low. 3 plugs, 1, 2, 3. This shift and linkage, so we're going to have to remove the shift and linkage. That's going to stay on that bracket. Looks like we have a clip in addition to a nut at the bottom. We'll have a couple coolant lines we will need to deal with. This one here and this one here. We might just pinch them off. We'll leave the motor mount or the transmission mount in for now, for the time being, because we have to go underneath and pull the axles. But while we're underneath, we'll address this clip, the linkage. I'm not going to remove the coolant lines yet. That way we don't have to deal with the fluid. We'll work on that later. All right, let's get the wheels pulled off. All right, now I have the wheels off, I'm going to remove the axle nuts. This is a 12-point metric, 30 millimeter. All right, so next we're going to do the ball joints. I believe it's a 17 millimeter. On this one, we got to remove the transfer case, whatever you want to call it. But anyways, I'm going to remove the exhaust because plus once you start moving the engine, I don't want to take any chances. I'm hoping that with this loose, it'll slide around enough to where I don't have to take apart the rusted bolts in the back. We'll find out soon enough. I know this doesn't penetrate into the threads quite the way it should, but what I believe it does help with is once it starts going into the threads, it keeps them from galling up as bad. 14 millimeter again. Perfect. Use a short extension for this guy. We got this little cover here. See if we can pull down on this lower control arm because next we're going to have to remove the axles. You know, we're getting to that point where we want to try to remove the axle from here like so. I don't know if you can see this little notch in that axle boot. what I do is I just get that in there and I give it a quick pop. Push this off a little bit. Move the axle. This side here is a little different. I got a little retaining clip I gotta pop out. Sometimes they just get rusted in there a little bit. I should be able to roll that out. There you go. All right, now hopefully it pops out. All right, close your eyes in case something splashes you. I'm just going to be honest with you guys with this one. I'm probably going to destroy the bearing, but I'll have to replace it because it's just too rusted in there. I can't get this bearing to slide out. And you can't just take the housing off because they're pinned up top. So we'll have to drive her out. Well, guys, for the time being, I'm going to let that soak for a little bit. I hosed it down. We're going to see if it penetrates a little bit. There's a lot more we could be doing. So I'm going to take and remove the linkage here and also that clip that we were attempting to do from up top. It's better if you have a wrench or something that fits this pry bar, but I'm trying to utilize what I have, being kind of lazy now. Put that on there, give it a twist. Whew, there you have it. I'll try to use a 12 ratchet wrench here. Good. I want to take it out of park anyhow because you got to remove the drive shaft yet. So, there you guys, bouncing around a little bit while that's soaking. We're going to jump back here. We got to start removing the rear drive shaft. I believe it's a 12. Let's see. Maybe not. Maybe I can't get it with this. I was trying to do it with one of these style ball swivels. So using one of the old style knuckle swivels. They're more low profile. Dude. Really? Just jumping to the back. Same thing, 12 millimeter. Watch where that nut goes. Alright, you'll notice the same thing with the front. This back one might not be so bad, but you'll have this little notch. There's one on each side. In the front, you get it with the, you get onto it from an angle, and you give it a little tap. Back here, it's a little bit harder. You want to be careful on this aluminum housing. You don't want to pry too much, but you just want to pop that loose because they tend to stick on there. Once you get both of them loose, front and back, you're going to come up here and you'll have two carrier bolts that we're going to remove and lower it out. Start by taking one all the way out. You'll see that there's shims above it. It's very important. Because that has to go back together the same way. But we'll cover that more as we put it together. I'm going to start by removing the back shaft, and then we'll remove the front. And abracadabra. I'm gonna pop this little plastic cover off here because there's a oop, that's one of the things you gotta be careful of when these things are dried out. It's just there'll be a few that you're gonna have to replace, and that's okay. We'll replace them. Woohoo! Doing that because we have 2 bolts here for a transmission mount that we'll be removing, and we can do that next. I got this thing soaking. It is moving a little bit, but I'm just giving it a little bit of time because I'll show you what I'm going to do. Since it's moving one way, I soak some penetrant oil in there, and I'm going to hammer it back in, and I'm going to try to knock it out. Got this one transmission mount that we got to take out eventually anyway, so I'm just going to be proactive and remove that one. You can't really get to this bolt too easily in any other direction. Oh, can't use a swivel. So we're going to have to use a 17 millimeter shallow. All right, well, that one followed us for a little bit, but it seems like letting it soak for a little bit actually helped out. So, okay, before I get too far ahead of myself, we're starting to unhook this transfer case unit. You see I have one nut here, another nut here. We got one more up top I forgot that I missed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 retainers up top. And I guess there's one more in the back that I gotta try to reach around and grab. All 17 millimeters. All right, once you have all those bolts out, there's a couple spots where you can actually get in to start prying this out a little bit. You got to get it out past these dowel pins. So just like a spot in the tranny here, and you just get behind it, wiggle it, go up top, wiggle it. Don't pry it too crooked, you know, try to keep it as square as possible. I'm hoping the exhaust and this flange back here allows me to get the studs far enough out. If not, we'll cross that path once we get there. But we'll see. No, looks like there's enough room. Let me see if I can just pull it up now. Oh, yeah. I come right out the back with it. All right, there should be. While the camera was charged and I took and I removed the rear mount, it's pretty straightforward. It's got 2 nuts in the back, 17 millimeters, and 2 bolts in the front. You gotta take down that little cover. I believe I did capture that part. To get this one bolt out, it's a little tricky because the steering column's in the way. But once you get these loose, what I did, I jumped up front and I took out the 2 bolts for the front mount. And then I put my transmission jack underneath it and I jacked it up a little bit. And then I was able to manipulate it enough to get this bolt to slide out. Once I got that bolt to slide out, then I was able to remove the mount, and then you gain access to your transfer case. Next, what I'm going to do is everything's just pretty much floating here now from this transmission mount and the other motor mount. We're going to take and remove this front cross member. Looks like we have some 17 millimeters, 2 here. We have this cross brace over here. It's the same one that we removed initially over here when we dropped the pan. It's just 4 bolts, 17 millimeter as well. Should come out. Okay, so that's a cross brace for this side. Got a little weight to her, so be ready for it. Take and pop this cover off here. This is going to give us access to the torque converter bolts. For this, I'll be using a swivel extension. I'm getting it from way out here. That's one. Okay, next I'm going to zip out these bell bolts on the bottom. 14 millimeter. I'll be using the same setup I just used on the torque converter bolts. Okay. Tell you what I'll do. I got one bell bolt that I can reach from down here. So I'm going to put one of these back in. I gotta see where my apparatus is going to go for holding this thing up, just so the transmission doesn't fall out. I'm going to put one here. I'm going to break that one loose on the backside that I can reach, and I'll give you guys a shot of it. All right, next you're going to have to support the engine. Get yourself a cross member of some sort, and make sure it's going to support the weight. I have a jack under the transmission, and then an apparatus that I made up with a strap underneath, and I'll show you shortly, but I'm not sharing this one because I don't want anybody to get hurt. So they have the right tools for the job to go across the strut towers. Mine didn't fit this vehicle, but I would recommend doing so or use your best judgment. Next, we're taking and removing the transmission mount. I got the bolt out. Like I said, I wanted to make sure everything's going to hold up okay. I got all but one bolt remaining. Next, I'm going to take and start removing bell bolts. I got one here. I got one right back there. Then we got one right down in there. 17 millimeter. I'll just be using a swivel with my impact gun. All right, so now I crimped off the coolant lines like you see here. I also added a little bolt to this one. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. If you're going to crimp the hoses, make sure you use something that's not going to pinch it or leave any abrasions. All right, so now we have the tranny jack underneath it. We just removed this bell bolt. I got this one that I was telling you about earlier. It's right up right there. I'm going to spin that out now.
Okay guys, sorry my wireless mic for some reason disconnected at this point, but you can see how I have it set up. I have a jack stand underneath the engine itself. That's supporting the weight of the engine. The strap is a safety strap just in case something were to slip. And now I'm just using my transmission jack and I'm wiggling the transmission back out and away from the flywheel, because it sticks out a little bit further. Even though there's plenty of clearance, once you get the engine low enough along with the transmission, try to keep everything even on the same plane. And then once you have it to where it clears the bell housing and whatnot, then you could just slide it backwards and then straight down. So it's going to take a little finagling, especially if you're doing this on your back. It's going to be tough. But right here was a sweet feel of success, knowing that I was able to clear that flywheel and start going straight down. At this point, I can start rolling it out from underneath the vehicle, and then we'll transfer it over to my lift table. In hindsight, I probably should have just used the lift table to remove this transmission. All right, so now we have her transferred over to the other lift table. This is the one I was referring to. It would have been much more safer to use in hindsight. It's always 20/20. But here's a general overview, and that's what we had to clear to get the flywheel away from the bell housing. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and I always enjoy reading your feedback.